Picture this. Out in the deep blue of the Mediterranean, a really tense international showdown is brewing. On one side, you've got a whole fleet of ships, the global Flotilla. They're packed with activists and what they say is crucial humanitarian aid. And on the other side, the Israeli Navy, with a very clear, very direct order. This is the story of that confrontation, a total clash of missions playing out on the high seas.
Let's be clear, that wasn't a suggestion. It was a final command, and it was given out in international waters. This message right here, it captures the exact moment a humanitarian mission slammed head-on into a military blockade. It set the stage for absolutely everything that came next, and it turned what was supposed to be a voyage into a major international incident.
So here's the absolute heart of the problem. Both sides were convinced that their mission was completely, 100% legitimate. For the flotilla, this was all about challenging a blockade they see as totally illegal and getting aid directly to people who need it. But for Israel, it was all about national security and enforcing that exact same blockade. You've got two fundamentally opposing goals, and they were on a direct collision course.
Okay, so after that confrontation out at sea, the focus shifts. We move from the wide-open water to a very specific spot on the Israeli coast. The next chapter of this story unfolds at the port of Ashdod, which is the designated endpoint for any ship that tries to breach the blockade.
You have to understand, Ashdod Port is the central processing hub in all of these events. It's where the intercepted ships from the flotilla are towed. It's where the activists are taken for questioning and eventually deportation. And it's where all that humanitarian cargo is brought for a really thorough inspection before it can even be considered for transfer into Gaza.
And the whole process at Ashdod is incredibly methodical. It follows a very clear protocol. First, the Navy tows the vessels in. Then, the activists are handed over to custody for processing. After that, the aid itself is seized for that all-important security screening. And finally, the deportation process for the activists begins. This is Israel's structured official response to what it considers an illegal attempt to violate its security.
And the scale of this whole operation, it was huge. According to Greece's foreign minister, 39 ships from the flotilla were eventually brought into Ashdod. Now, we're not just talking about one or two boats here. This was a massive naval and logistical operation that involved hundreds of activists from dozens and dozens of different countries.
So, we've seen what happened, right? But that brings us to the much bigger question, why? Why does this standoff keep happening time and time again? To really get that, we have to dig into the two fundamentally different ways each side sees this situation, both legally and morally.
This right here, this gets to the very core of the dispute. The flotilla organizers are arguing that stopping them on the high seas is basically piracy, because, in their view, the blockade itself is illegal. In stark contrast, Israel argues the blockade is a legal and necessary security measure, which means any attempt to breach it is, by definition, unlawful. They are literally operating from two completely different legal and moral universes.
And you know, this whole confrontation, it isn't some kind of one-off event. The 2025 incident is really just the latest chapter in a long history of very similar attempts to break the Gaza blockade by sea. It's a pattern of defiance and interception that's been repeating itself for years now.
This timeline shows a really clear pattern. After one successful arrival way back in 2008, pretty much every major attempt since has been intercepted. Now, the 2010 Mavi Marmara raid, where 10 activists were killed, that was a huge turning point. It dramatically raised the stakes, it drew massive global attention, and it really solidified the battle lines that we are still seeing play out today. At the very heart of this entire conflict is a really complex legal debate. I mean, it's a clash of fundamental principles, and it's all based on different ways of interpreting international maritime law. This is the legal battlefield.
So, to even begin to understand the legal fight, we first need to get a handle on this key term, international waters, sometimes called the high seas. Under international law, these waters are basically open to everyone for free passage. The flotilla organizers' entire argument hinges on this. They say since the interceptions happened here, they were by definition illegal. End of story.
Okay, now this is where it gets incredibly complicated. The term collective punishment, that's punishing an entire population for what a few people did, is illegal under international law. And back in 2010, a UN Human Rights Council report called the blockade exactly that. Case closed, right? Well, no, because just 1 year later, a totally separate panel appointed by the UN Secretary General came to the exact opposite conclusion. They found the blockade to be a legal security measure. So you have two UN-affiliated bodies, two completely contradictory findings.
So what this incident really does is force us to confront some of the most fundamental, nail-biting tensions in all of international law. You've got state security clashing with humanitarian intervention. You've got national sovereignty clashing with freedom of navigation. These are the big, difficult, and still unresolved questions that are sitting right at the center of the story.
And all of that leaves us with this final, essential question. It's the legal and moral puzzle that this confrontation, and all the ones that came before it, puts right in front of the whole world. And the thing is, there is no simple answer. It's a question that is absolutely going to continue to be debated long after the ships have been processed and all the activists have been sent home.